Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mormonish. I'm Rebecca.
And I'm Landon.
I'm so glad that you're here to say that.
Yeah,
we've done a couple episodes without you, haven't we?
we have, and you'll probably continue to. So
Poor Landon. If only we could just quit our real jobs and podcast forever. It'd be a
that's
dream,
right.
right? It's true. Well, we're doing our favorite kind of podcast. It's a pop-up podcast. Landon's like, this is not my favorite kind of podcast, right? Or I say, Landon, we've got to do this. I know it's 2:00 in the morning, but this is so interesting. So, but you got to strike while the iron's hot, right?
You do, and this is an interesting topic.
It is an interesting topic, and it's something that just kind of fell into my lap today, got on my radar. It's something that's being talked about today in faithful social media, and it has to do with Brigham Young and his wives. And the reason I was so intrigued is because, well, I mention all the time that I was raised by genealogists, right? I was literally raised and grew up in a genealogical library. My parents had the microfiche reader in their office. You know, I grew up to the whir of the microfiche reader. So anytime there's something where I get to kind of dig into some documents to try to figure something out, I was excited. I kind of went down a rabbit hole and lost all track of time. But we were able to put this presentation together, and I think it'll be pretty interesting, like you said.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And again, we are not professional genealogists. We are just looking at a scenario, looking at some documents, and we, of course, encourage everybody to go out and do your own research and look at things and learn more and bring more to the table. But we're just kind of introducing this interesting topic, which we're calling the mystery of Brigham Young's disappearing youngest wife. This is not a picture of the person that we're going to be talking about. I just found, and someone from the
That
era,
is Brigham
that
Young.
age. Yes, that is Brigham Young. And interestingly, this is a picture on the right in his top hat of how old he would have been about the time all these marriages that we're going to talk about happened. The picture on the left, that's maybe like 5 years after these marriages, but it's all kind of in the time frame just to kind of give you an idea of what he would look like.
Okay. So this girl is not
No.
the girl. Okay. This is
No,
not his disappearing wife.
no, and it's really interesting because let's go back one. I know we have the whole main thing before this one. Yeah, there we go. It's interesting because a lot of people, the pictures that you see of the wives are like this picture right here. You just don't ever picture that they are cute, young. Everybody was cute when they were young, right? You don't have pictures of that. So it's pretty easy to compartmentalize and say, oh yeah, that's a matronly. No, it was not a matronly person. And we're going to talk about that here. So stuff you missed in Sunday school, they put this out a while ago. It kind of to show the age gap between some of the prophets and their brides. Here you have Joseph Smith and of course, Helen Mar Kimball, who was 14, few weeks shy of her 15th birthday. That's a 22-year-old age gap. The biggest one there, Lorenzo Snow. What is that gap, Landon?
What is that? 42 years.
Yeah, 42 years marrying Sarah Minnie Jensen at age 15. You have Wilfred Woodruff, Emma Smoot Smith, also age 15. There's a 31-year age gap. But it looks like here Brigham Young, as far as we know so far, the youngest or the biggest age gap of a girl that he married, Clarissa Decker, age 15, and the gap was 27 years. So that's kind of always put out there as Clarissa was the youngest person that he married. That's what you hear all the time. If you Google it, it'll even say that with that 27-year gap. So, yeah. So
Lorenzo wins for the biggest age gap. And it looks like Joseph Smith wins for the youngest bride. Is that
exactly? Yes.
correct?
If any of this is winning, I know, like we're laughing uncomfortably because it's so horrible. And if we go to that next slide that you were on before, just to clarify, Clarissa Decker, age 15, Brigham Young was 42, and the age gap was 27 years. And I think that's what most of us think of as his youngest wife or the biggest age gap. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about today, because I think that may not be correct.
Well, why do you think that?
Why do I think that? We'll have to find out. So I kind of went looking for just some of the ages of the very young wives, right? There's a nice big chart on Wikipedia that takes everything from the church history site, and it kind of details, it's amazing the age range. Like he'd marry a 16-year-old one day, The next week, Brigham Young would marry a 61-year-old. It's just funny. There seemed to be no rhyme or reason. But here, for example, his 27th wife, when Brigham Young was 44, she was 16, and her name was Ellen Rockwood. So that's a picture
27th, he's only like halfway through.
Oh, yeah. Hasn't even barely gotten started. Yeah, the 27th wife. So I'm just kind of showing some examples of some of the younger women that he did marry, although Clarissa Decker is usually seen to be the very youngest.
Okay, so if I look at this right, Brigham Young was 44 when he married this 16-year-old girl, Ellen Rockwood.
Yep, that's exactly right. And I found a couple other ones. Here is his 43rd wife. And Brigham Young was 45 when he married her, and she was 16. So another 16-year-old.
Another child bride.
Another child bride. Let's see it. And this is funny. So I just, like I said, there's so many rabbit holes you can go down here. That, of course, is a picture from White Christmas. Sisters. I don't know if you're familiar. Yeah, that's actually my all-time favorite movie, I think. But as I was looking at young brides, this bride is 19, but she is the previous bride's sister. And basically another guy in the town is like, hey, I'm looking at these two sisters. They look pretty nice. Brigham, do you think I should marry him? And somehow he ended up marrying both of them on the same day. So
same day, a 19-year-old and a 16-year-old.
Yeah.
And he's 45.
Yeah, these are just not the stories that, people don't do the math. And I've said this before. I have an ancestor who was 15. And I've told the story before how she was friends with a boy in the village who was not LDS, and her parents ran with her to the bishop. This is my grandma's grandma, and said, what do we do? She's with this boy. And the bishop said, well, she can marry me, right? And he was something in his mid-50s. She was barely 16. And I once pointed that out to my dad on Family Search. And he's like, well, that can't be right. And I'm like, it's right. Do that math. So I think a lot of people don't really comprehend what this means, but it was rampant.
Well, and so often we hear the apologetic for this is, oh, it was a different time.
Yeah, no.
That's just bullshit.
Whoa. Landon's already
45-year-old men were not marrying sisters.
No, they were not.
45-year-old men were not marrying 15-year-olds at this time. You may find an example here or there, but this is not normal behavior. So anyone who says it was just a different time, no. In Nauvoo and in Utah, yes, that was a normal practice. Nowhere else was this a normal practice in Western society.
No, it wasn't. And in fact, when people look at the actual median ages, women were getting married, 20, and they were marrying someone very age appropriate, very close in age. This was a complete anomaly. And like you said, it was the norm, in some of these very insulated areas that were controlled by the LDS Church. So, all right. So sisters, you got 1916. Then you have Clarissa Decker, and she's the one we talked about before. And this was his 6th marriage, and she was 15. So as we mentioned before, everybody thinks she is the youngest wife at age 15, and he was 42. So here's who we're going to talk about today. This is Elizabeth Fairchild, and she was the 11th wife of Brigham Young, and she was married to Brigham Young when he was 43, and she was 16. Footnote 24, right? So of course I followed footnote 24, and from the history of the Church of Jesus Christ.org, the dates and her age are listed in the Church History Biographical Database, right? So this is where Wikipedia gets it to say that a 16-year-old Elizabeth Fairchild married a 43-year-old Brigham Young on October 3rd, 1844, and she's the 11th wife. So
when was this database? When did they retrieve this? It says they're retrieved January 20th, 2025. So just recently, just this year, they retrieved that data.
Yep. And really, as you're scrolling through all these, oh my gosh, 56, right? Wives, you wouldn't think anything of it. She's just another wife at age 16. We already just saw 3 or 4 others that are 16. It's just another 16-year-old. But as it turns out, Elizabeth Fairchild is sort of a special case and an exception. And this is why we're going to talk about her today. So on Family Search, which is a genealogical tool for the LDS Church, I used to go on that all the time. I still do, kind of. Did you ever use it, Landon?
Never.
Yeah, he's like, never. Did you never have that?
I avoided family history. I avoided, what was that thing they always wanted you to do? Indexing. I avoided that like the plague.
Oh my gosh.
I would not let my scouts that we would not do an activity that was indexing.
Oh, you're so funny. I was visiting a relative once and they're like 4:00 in the afternoon. Okay, kids. And they had teenagers. It's time to do your hour of indexing. And I was like, oh my gosh, these poor children. For those of you that don't know, that's when, you can go online and do it. And there's a record and you transcribe it. Like you type in what you think the handwriting says, and then it's available for other people. I mean, it actually is a very useful thing. Of course, there's all those rumors that, I don't even know if they're rumors. I think they're more substantiated than rumors, that the church actually sells that indexing data to Ancestry. I think there was some kind of big expose on that later, but this is not about that.
I did index one time as part of some activity that we were doing. Okay. And I tell you, it really opened my eyes because I couldn't read 90% of the, they were in cursive from 1860. They were German names. Yep. And I'm trying to translate that into something. So as we get on here, that it makes sense. There's all kinds of errors happen during indexing.
Yeah. And that explains why when I did baptisms for the dead, when I was a youth, somebody in our group was baptized for somebody named Chicken. I'm not kidding. We will never forget that.
And you got 12-year-old kids trying to read these cursive. They don't even know how to write cursive anymore. They don't even know that.
Nope, there's actually, somehow I'm on this Reddit thread called Help Me Translate This, and it is cursive. And people say, I got this from my grandma. Can someone help me with this? I can read it perfectly because I can read cursive, but literally a younger person needs to go to a crowdsourcing option to get help reading a note from your grandma. So anyway, we digress, right? So, okay. So Family Search, there's a lot to it, but it's a genealogical database and resource tool for anybody in the world, actually. So here they talk about Elizabeth Fairchild, and they say Elizabeth was born on the 28th of March in 1828 in Marion, Ohio. Her father was Joshua Fairchild, and he was 31, and her mother was Prudence Fenner, and she was 29. And then it says that Elizabeth married Brigham Young on the 3rd of October, 1844. We saw that in Wikipedia. I'm sure this is probably what they sourced in Nauvoo, right? So this is a Nauvoo wedding, sealing, I should say. And then it has some other stuff about her life and that she died on June 26th in Grantsville, Tooele in 1910. So there she is. And it's interesting because it says here that she died at the age of 82, the ripe old age of 82, in 1910. And I guess that all tracks, right? She was born in 1828. She died in 1910, and she was 82 years old. So.
Yeah, I want to point out something here too, and I don't know what that says after the more, if there's more information, but notice that it says she married Brigham Young. Yep. And that's all it says about her marriage to Brigham Young. Let's dive a little deeper.
It's true. There's going to be a lot of numbers here. Everybody get out a pad and paper and let's start writing things down, okay? And this, again, these are not the parents. I just had some fun with AI, right? Okay. So here is an actual church history site. This is not Family Search. This is the Church History Biographical Database where you can look anybody up. It says Elizabeth Fairchild, and here it has her birthday as March 6th. If you remember in the past screen, it said March 28th, but it still has the same date of 1828 and the same death date June 26, 1910. And as Landon was alluding to, why don't you take us through these, Landon? She had a very interesting life. She really was only sealed to Brigham Young for about a year.
Yeah, if you look here at her alternate names, this is important because we got to track her, and so
and it's going back to
backward.
forward.
Yeah. So this her last husband was named Chastain. Then she'd married a guy named Lyman. She'd married a guy named Matthew. She married a guy named McMurray, and she married a guy named Young, or Brigham Young in this case. So something very interesting here. She had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 husbands. She was married to Brigham Young, but
sealed, I guess, or married. I guess married, sealed. Well,
they would have had to been married to be sealed. And so she had to have, she was only married to him for like a year, and it didn't say anything about that in the previous slide. About her being divorced or, because Brigham Young wasn't dead. So she must have gotten a divorce. That's the only way.
Well, and that is what happened. In 1855, she'd already been married to 2 other people, and she did finally divorce him. So that's kind of interesting too, isn't it? Yeah. But unfortunately, and I wish I would have had more time to dig more into her life, but it looked like kind of a sad tale where she just kind of went from LDS man to LDS man and crossed the plains, and I think that happened to a lot of women when you start out so young. So it is actually really sad if you really start to dig in. But I just wanted to explain Family Search, because we're going to be talking about Family Search a lot here in this episode. To make it even more clear, it's a nonprofit organization and a website offering genealogical records, education software operated by the church. It's kind of a crowdsourced thing. My dad, the consummate genealogist, it would make him crazy because it is crowdsourced. Like you have a lesson on it at church. Come on, everybody, go home, get on Family Search. People go home, they got on it. They're like, oh, that name seems to match that name. I'm going to make that change, right? Oh, my dad policed our family tree. My gosh, I guess maybe he's not doing that anymore now that he's passed away. Maybe I'll have to start policing our family tree. But yeah, the information is very interesting on there with lots of different records. You can upload documents to support the information that you put in. You can upload pictures, I think, video, maybe even all kinds of different things. And believe it or not, it allows you to show a same-sex pairing. Isn't that interesting on Family Search? Really interesting.
That's not this. So
no, that's not this. I know so much about it. I know I'm such a geek. I'm so geeked out about genealogy. It's terrible. So I will tell you what kind of came onto my radar today from somebody. And this is a person who'd been researching for a project that they were working on, Elizabeth Fairchild. And so they just a couple weeks ago had gone on to Family Search. And there's Elizabeth, just like we saw. There's all of her names of her husbands. And there's her birth date, which is 1828 on March 6th. So, okay, that's great. This person took a screenshot. There it is. Fantastic. Born March 6th. So just to kind of make it clear, a person who is born on March 28th or 6th, again, there's a little wiggle room there, of 1828 would be 16 years, 6 months, and 6 days old on October 3rd, 1844. And again, October 3rd, 1844 is her wedding day. So this document on Family Search lets us know that she was 16 years old. She was born in 1828. She was 16 when she married Brigham Young. And that's what's been reported, what we've seen everywhere, because I think they use this document as the basis. So here's where it gets really weird, right? Let's all go like this. So that same person who took that screenshot has been researching for a while. He's been working on projects here and there, and he happened to be looking at the same person, looking her up on Family Search 2 years ago in 2023. Can you tell me what you see that's different on this record from 2023?
Well, there's a couple. One, she's born on March 29th.
Yeah.
But in this case, it's 1831 instead of 1828.
Okay. Now that's interesting. Now, if you know anything about dates and understand the math, the later you are born, the younger you are, right? Does that make sense? Yeah. So 1831 means she's younger than some of those other pages and things alluded to. Not 1828, but instead 1831. So interesting that this screenshot was taken in September of 2023. And then when the site is revisited, somebody has made a change. And now she's older. She was born in 1828. They've kind of backdated her, right?
Yeah, it just looks like a problem here.
Yeah, it does look like a problem. And again, there's a lot of wiggliness in genealogy, and that's why you have to be really careful. And what you really want to look at are specific source documents, and some documents have more weight than others. They're more authentic. They're more official than others. And we'll kind of go through that. But usually historians or even amateur genealogists know that there are certain kinds of documents that you can kind of count on to be fairly accurate, especially if it's corroborated with other of those types of documents.
And I guess this is a problem because this makes her younger. And if we remember, she was 16 at the time, yep. or they say she was 16. Yep. So how old does this date make her?
Yeah, and that's the question. Do I have a slide on that? Oh, yes, I do. And, I have to say, I used to be able to do these dates in my head. Being raised by genealogists, going to cemeteries every summer on vacation. That was the only thing I could do for fun, is like add the dates up, how old you were. But I did go to AI for this to make sure I was correct. So on your wedding day in October 3rd, 1844, if you were born like this website page from years ago that was changed on March 29th, 1831, you would be 13 years old, 6 months and 4 days. 13 years old. Not 16 years old. You would be 13.
And you're not almost 14. You're 13. I mean, 13 and 6 months. 13 and a half. You're just barely on that side. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I said just shy of her 14th birthday.
And you're a lot shy of your 14th birthday when you just barely went halfway over.
Exactly. So I hope that you're all following us. The church Family Search website right now says that she was born in 28. Therefore, she was 16 when she's married to Brigham Young. However, on the very same site a few years ago, it said that she was born in 31, making her 13 years old when she was married to Brigham Young. So it's kind of a mystery, which is what I like. So
there's quite a big difference between a 16-year-old and a 13-year-old. And if you were trying to make it sound a little better what he was doing, I certainly would be wanting to say he's 16 rather than 13, because I don't 16 is bad enough, but we're talking about a child here, 13 years old.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So we're going to dig into some of the documents and see where we think all of this came from. But that is what we're talking about, that we believe that there is a much younger wife who was married to Brigham Young when she was only 13 years old. That's our hypothesis, isn't it, Landon? And again, we're amateur genealogists, so we welcome anybody, especially those of you historians who have more access, to records from the church, to look into this, because we are very curious. And I know it has been looked into by others, maybe some that kind of like went, oh, no, not going to go there. So I would love to see this kind of fleshed out authoritatively, and let's figure out what's going on. So another screenshot from Family Search. This is a current one. Again, the date now says the 28th of March. They seem to be really confused about what day in March she was born, but the date is 1831. And this is a screenshot. I'm sorry, I misspoke, from 2023. This is another older screenshot where it says that she was born in 1831, and it lists her father and mother and all those kinds of things. And if you look down toward the bottom, there she is, 1831 to 1910. That's her information.
It kind of makes you think someone must have had some compelling evidence to change their birth date, or something would have. Yeah. And so that's what got you looking and saying, what caused them to change this? Why? Mm-hmm. Other than, obviously there's the obvious, well, it sounds a lot better if she's 16 than 13. So, let's choose this date, but let's look at the documents you have to show why you think she's 13.
Yep, exactly. And that's 2023. Here's 2025. And this is how it is now. It says, again, 1828 on Family Search. So it's like every Every mention of 1831 has been scrubbed, and it has been replaced with 1828. So you're right. We need to figure out where these numbers came from, because right now they're just numbers. So our question is, why has Elizabeth's birthday been changed from 1831 to 1828? And which date is correct? So that was my fact-finding mission today. And I actually had a lot of fun working on it. So let's look for some other sources, because that's the first thing that genealogists or even amateur genealogists do, of course. And I did have some help. I had some other people I was talking to that were like, hey, I have this record, or I've noticed this. So it's kind of been interesting to dig into this. Every single one of his wives has such an interesting, tragic story, and it's just, even just being able to, I don't know, shine a spotlight on one. Yeah, it's kind of emotional, actually, when you think about might have happened here. So a little bit more about Elizabeth, like Landon alluded to before. She was married to Brigham Young. She was also married to James David Lyman, Joseph W. McMurray Sr., and William Lowry Chastain. She was married to Brigham Young in 1844, as we talked about, in Nauvoo. And then she married Lyman in 1846. So she was very young, and it was very soon after she was with Brigham Young that she married her next husband. Then she married McMurray in 1853 in Salt Lake, because she did make her way with the Saints from Nauvoo to Salt Lake, and then finally to Chastain in 1867. And why this is important is because on some of the records, you're going to see her last name listed differently, right? Depending on who she was married to. So we need to make sure we understand that she's Elizabeth Young, Elizabeth Lyman, Elizabeth McMurray, and Elizabeth Chastain, right?
Yep. And it's a little confusing, but all of their documents check out. We were following them through and making sure, this came up. Why is she named Elizabeth McMurray? How do we know this is the same person?
Yeah.
Well, we went back and found out that that's who she'd married. So that's why it's a different name on a different document. So.
Yep. And all the documents that we looked at are attached on Family Search. That's what's so interesting, is that the documents that you're going to see don't support this, at least in our mind, they don't support this 1828. And they're literally attached right there on the same site. So that's why it's kind of a mystery. All right. So I just went over to Ancestry, because it's a great repository of all kinds of information. I don't have an account, but you can get some, just kind of initial information. So on Ancestry, Elizabeth Betsy, as she was known, Fairchild, it seems to be in line with that screenshot from Family Search from 2023. What it used to be says 28th of March, 1831, Marion, Ohio, USA. Death, 10th of June. Now that's interesting, because I'm not sure if it's the 10th. there seems to be wiggle room in the actual days, but 1910 in Grantsville, that is where she died. And it lists her father and mother, as we saw on the other document. So I also found her, just the Shemwell family. They had a family tree online. Did your family do that, Landon? Mine had tons of information like that online.
I'm sure my mother has one. She does a lot of genealogy, but I've never looked up anything online for.
Yeah, exactly. So this family tree, this is not necessarily a credible source. It's just kind of a source where these people also found this information. So, it kind of makes you think, okay, I might be on the right track. But it also says March 28th, 1831 in Marion. And this has the death date of June 26th, which, as you'll see later, is more supported by documentation, 1910. So you can see how there's all kinds of wiggle room. Ancestry says June 10th. This says June 26th, but they all say 1910 in Grantsville. Okay, do you want to talk about the census, Landon? What is the census, and how important is it?
We know every year in the every 10 years in the United States, they conduct a census. The purpose of the census is to determine how many people live in each state. It's how we decide how many senators and how many representatives each get. It is an official document. Typically, they would go around to people's houses and they'd say, who all lives here? How old are they? What are the names of the children? And they would document every person, and that's a requirement by law that they go go about doing this. So this is an official U.S. Census document. This is an official government document that labels Elizabeth.
Yep, exactly. And it says, and we'll go to the next slide to look a little more closely, that she's 29 years old. So let's do some math here. If you were born in 1831, how old would you be in 1860?
You'd be 29.
Yeah, you would be 29. If you were born in 1828, you'd be like 31 or
32.
yeah, 32. Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, it depends on the month and everything. But yeah, definitely this seems to say that Elizabeth was 29 years old.
Which shows she was born in 1831, according to U.S. Census documents. And it's important. Yes, her name's Elizabeth McMurray. Again, she married a McMurray. She was only married to Brigham Young for 2 years or less.
Less, I think.
But here in 1860, the U.S. Census Bureau put her down as 29 years old at that time.
Yep. And again, this document is attached to her profile over there on Family Search. So I didn't even have to go digging. It was right there.
Yeah. So the very one that says she was born in 1828 has this document that says that she was born in, that would have indicate she's born in 1831.
Yeah. It's very confusing. I'm not quite sure what's going on. And again, we encourage anybody to go out there and look stuff up. If you still have a Family Search account or you're on Ancestry, we'd love to find out more information. And we kind of had limited time to do it. So somebody else dig in. Okay, another kind of a more official kind of a document is a death certificate, right? That can have a lot of really good information on it. It's filled out at the time of death or right there. So it's like a contemporary source. And this is the death certificate. And it says on it, March 28th is when she was born, 1831. And like you said, Landon, it's a little squiggly. We have a close-up, I think, on the next slide, but it's definitely not a 2. That's definitely a 3, right?
Yep.
And then, you said could be a 0, but, 1831 tracks with everything else. And it also says that she was 79 years, 2 months, and 28 days in 1910. So again, if we do that math, when would you have been born if you were 79 in 1910? I told everybody to get a pad and paper, right?
Comes out in 1831. So again, we have an official legal document from the state of Utah that says that she was born in 1831.
Yeah. So again, that 1828 date, I can't quite figure it out, but I think we'll get there as we keep going here. Let's see what else. Okay, there it is. Yeah, so that's the June. Now they're saying the burial was June 28th, 1910. So.
And that's the burial. I think one of the things said her death was in June 10th. So that'd be 18 days later. That seems like a long time.
No. Yeah, and then another thing said the 26th. So, goodness, sorry. So here is something in the Grantsville News talking about her passing. Mrs. William Chastain died last Sunday evening of general debility and old age. I feel like that's what they're going to put on my I already feel like I have general debility right now. And here it says 79 years old, right? So that would be something that genealogists or historians would look at. They'd go, okay, look, I know, you have the newspaper date, you have the paper saying she's 79. I mean, it's not as laser focused as a census, but it gives you an idea that, okay, 79 and it's 1910. It says funeral services were held at the Meeting House, LDS, I'm assuming Tuesday, June 28th at 2 p.m. So there it is. She's buried. We could actually probably go visit her grave if we wanted.
Yeah, it's important too to note here that, generally the newspaper, they're not going and getting documents and stuff. No. There's probably a family member who they've talked to who told them, she's 79 years old. So you would think the family members would know how old she was. And if she's 79, She was born in 1831, which made her 13 years old when she married Brigham Young.
Wow. Landon goes straight to it. I love the rest of this. The Mrs. Esther and Ethel Sutton left here last Saturday on a visit to their sister, Mrs. Pascott, in Grouse Creek. Can you imagine if the newspaper reported every little thing like that? And then you have all these births, a boy, a girl, a boy, a boy. Everybody's doing well. Oh, the good old days, right? You don't have that anymore. Okay, so here's where it gets also very strange. Although Landon has a good take on that I think is correct. So if you go to a website called Find a Grave, you can actually find pictures of graves and information that come off of tombstones. So this says Elizabeth Fairchild Chastain, because remember at this point she is married to her fifth husband. She is Mrs. Chastain. And here it says, oh my goodness, the death date is correct, June 10th, 1910. I mean, there it is, the 10th again. Yeah. So I don't even know if that's correct, but the year I think is correct. Here it says March 28th, 1832. I think that's got to be a typo.
Yeah. So anyone who does the math, 1832 is even worse than 1831 because that made her 12 years old when she married Brigham Young. This is the only 1832 date we see, and we have to throw this out and assume this is wrong because this is not her original headstone. You can see it's got a Faith in Every Footstep memorial. So I think this was part of a church thing to put headstones on pioneer people who came across in pioneer time. And evidently whoever recorded the date and put it on here put the wrong date because there's no other corroborating evidence for 1832 at all. Just
right. And it would throw off all the numbers on the census and the article about her death and the death certificate, all that points to 1831. So it could just be, again, reading that record not correctly, like that one we saw with a 3 and then kind of a, is that a 2? Is it a 1? Is it a 0? It's difficult. It really is. Good thing it's all going to be worked out in the next life, right?
That's right.
Because there's no way we can do it accurately here. So
this headstone's 100 years after she died that this headstone gets carved. So we can probably safely throw that away. But, if anyone wants to argue that, then you're arguing that it was a 12-year-old girl that he married, not a 13-year-old.
It doesn't help them, right? Not at all. I think my next slide is how old is that? Yeah, well, that would have made her, as you said, Landon, a 12-year-old, right?
Yeah.
So just to kind of recap, so many sources say 1831. Where did the church get the 1828 date that they needed to make Elizabeth 16 at the time of her marriage? Because to recap, on Family Search right now, it says 1828 in a couple different places, right? So where is this date? We haven't seen it anywhere yet, have we? On the census, on the death certificate, when you do the math, the blurb in the paper, there's nothing that indicates 1828. So where are they getting this to the point that they're so confident that between 23 and 25, they're actually going to change the entry in Family Search?
Yeah, and keep in mind that all of these records are in there, are attached. Yeah. So you've got all these records that show 1831. The majority of them in there show 1831. Why would you go with an 1828 date instead of 1831? This must be an overwhelmingly, a birth certificate or something. What are they using to get to this?
Yeah. And like you say, we didn't have a chance to look at every document out there. We don't know what else is there, but I do know what is attached on those sites. So there may be more. We don't know. Here, I believe, is where they got the date 1828 for a birthday. So this is the Nauvoo Temple Endowment Register, right? And this was compiled for Elizabeth on December 24th, Christmas Eve, of 1845. So she was already married to Brigham Young, and this is when she went through the temple. And here it has her listed. It says Fairchild Betsy, right? And we saw before that she goes by Betsy, and our next slide will show for sure. But here it says March 6th. That's that date that we've seen on Family Search, and it says 1828. So Fairchild Betsy, the 6th of March, 1828. And we haven't seen this. Go ahead.
The 6th of March date doesn't match the 28 March that 28 March date that we see
Right.
everywhere else.
Yep. I was just going to say that there's no other record that shows March 6th except for Family Search, but all the other things we saw were the 28th of March. So I think the next slide shows kind of like her pseudonyms, right? So Betsy E. Fairchild is listed in another kind of a record, and Elizabeth Fairchild listed in another kind of a record.
I think SLG might be sealing record.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah. I think it. See, WA is washing and anointing, I think is what it is. So, yeah, see, all that lingo. So, and of course, Landon has a great observation. What's different about this record and the way it visually looks to the other records?
Yeah, it's typed.
Mm-hmm. It's typed up. So did they type this record at the endowment house in 1845?
They did not, since the typewriter had not been invented until 1874.
Well, how do we know that, maybe Joseph Smith invented a typewriter like back in the 1830s? Who knows? He was pretty innovative. But no, there's no way this would have been a handwritten record. So why are we seeing this here as a very clean, typed up version that says March 6th, 1828? I think the next slide will explain this for us. I did throw that in there, the washing and anointing, and also the endowment. Look at that record there, the 24th. Isn't that interesting? And that's a picture, that's Salt Lake, but that's an old washing and anointing room where they used to have you not wear any clothes and use fire whiskey, right?
Poured in a bathtub. Yeah.
Poured in a bathtub. That's it. Boy, those were the days, right?
And we thought it was bad when we had to wear the sheet and they reached under.
The poncho with the no sides. Yeah. I mean, it was women who were anointing women and men anointing men, but even so, yeah.
You were stark.
And if you think about it, our great grandmas were doing that. So this is why that's a nice typed up chart right there. Family Search uses the BYU Nauvoo Community Project as the source for the 1828 date. So if you go there, they cite 3 sources for the birth date, okay? The headstone, which is 1832, and we already kind of thought, throw that out. That probably is a mistake. The death record, which is 1831, that's the one that's handwritten and it's contemporary and credible, I believe, to use the church's words, right? Contemporary, credible. That's what they called the Nauvoo expositor, remember, in the essay. And then the Nauvoo sealing record, 1828. And for some reason, on Family Search, the way it's presented to everybody who's a member of the church, they chose the temple sealing document, which is typed, and of all those is clearly not an original source, right?
That's correct. It could not have been an original source because it was typed. It was part of this Nauvoo Community Project that they, we don't know when this record, there has to be an original somewhere that they got it, but we don't have it. No. So, as you said, as a genealogist, you look for original records are going to be more accurate than non-original, and handwritten records are going to be more believable than typed, because you could easily hit something when you're typing and hit it wrong, but usually when you're writing a number, you're not going to mistype something. So handwritten documents should be used over typewritten documents. And in the case of this, both the death record and the census, which are both handwritten, contemporary, we know right where they came from. We have the original copies. They both say 1831, and they're both legal documents.
Right.
Nauvoo Temple is not, a headstone is not a legal document. Those two are both legal documents. So why would you choose the non-legal documents and the late documents over contemporary documents that are legal documents?
Yeah, well, it's because you're trying to create a narrative, right, that isn't as disturbing as perhaps the truth. And I would love it if anybody could do some research and come up with, the original Nauvoo Temple sealing record. It's probably there somewhere because they used it as the source during this project to type it up. So again, we are not professionals. We're just digging in on the superficial level, and we'd love to see what else there is. And maybe there are things out there that completely prove our hypothesis wrong, right? It's possible. So please, everybody go do your own research and dig in. Let's see. And I have a little bit of information about that project, the Nauvoo project. So, family history students at Brigham Young University Center for Family History and Genealogy are conducting research to identify the residents of Nauvoo, Illinois did I say Illinois? I did, Illinois, from 1839 to 1846. Wherever possible, each resident will be documented from birth to death using the records of the time. This data is available to all who are interested in the history of the community, as well as descendants seeking information about their ancestral families. So it's volunteers, it's kids, right? Looking at written records and going, I think that name is Chicken, right? Like the kid that was baptized when I was a kid. Or maybe they look at it and they say, I think that's a 2 and an 8. Whatever it is, somehow the endowment record shows a different birthday. But again, secondhand source copied from something else. So when you have the two weighted, the census and the death certificate, usually more credibility is given here. And this is more likely to be the correct date of 1831. So it's time to vote, Landon. Let's vote. Is Elizabeth's birthday in 1828 or 1831? What do you think?
Well, based on the documents that we've seen, I go with an 1831 date. I could be convinced differently if someone can produce a birth certificate or something like that. But so far, from what the documents we've seen, the 1828 does not hold water when you compare, the legal documents and the reasons we just said. I think it's 1831, and I think she was 13 years old.
There you go. Yeah. And not only the documents, but just adding up the math. I'm 79 in 1910, things like that, where everything fits. So, but again, we could be convinced otherwise, of course, if somebody has access to some other documents or can see that we've interpreted something wrong. So I agree. I vote 1831. And for us, it doesn't matter. But for the church, trying to protect the image of Brigham Young, who their university is named after, it is problematic. There is a big difference between 13 and 16.
Yeah, there's a huge difference between a 16-year-old and a 13-year-old girl. It's 16-year-old is bordering on adulthood. A 13-year-old is bordering on childhood.
Yep, that's exactly right. So I think, so we kind of, just to make it clear, crunch these numbers one more time. So a person born like Brigham Young on June 1st, 1801, he would be 43 years old, 4 months and 2 days on the day he was married, which is October 3rd of 1844. So he's 43 years, 4 months. That's his age when he's getting married. And how old, if we're right, if our vote is right, and 1831 is the birthday, the age on October 3rd, 1844, the wedding day, would be 13 years, 6 months, and 5 days. We said that before, but I think now that we've gone through everything, it really hits it home. 43, 13.
And what would that make the age difference?
Yeah. Therefore, you want to read this one, Landon?
Yeah. Therefore, the age difference between June 1st, 1801 and March 28, 1831 is 29 years, 9 months, and 27 days, or just shy of 30 years.
Oh, dear. And if you remember that chart, and I think we'll show it here in a minute, they had calculated, the greatest age difference was 27 years with Clarissa Decker, and she was the youngest. But if this is correct, if Elizabeth, really was born in 31, that makes her the disappearing youngest wife, because we've never heard that.
And if you look here, the picture that we chose here is Warren Jeffs.
Yeah.
And I don't know the age of this girl, but she looks very close to that age, 13 to 15, just to show you how weird and creepy this marriage would have been. And you have to ask yourself, what's the difference between what Brigham Young was doing then and what has landed Warren Jeffs in prison now?
Yeah.
And there's absolutely no difference. Somehow we accept Brigham Young's polygamy unquestioned, and that it's all right to do this kind of, that a 13-year-old can consent in Brigham Young's time, but we know that they can't consent in our day and age at 13, and I'm sure they couldn't consent at 13 in Brigham Young's day and age either, other than that they controlled the law in Nauvoo and in Utah. But clearly, anyone who looks at this picture has got to just be saying, this is disgusting.
Yeah.
Whether she was 13 or 16, it still ends up the same way. You can't sugarcoat this, even though the church wants to, and they're going to try to. I don't know why all of these are coming out with the 28 date instead of the 31, but there's got to be a reason.
Yeah, well, Wikipedia picked up on it, as you saw. And so anybody that scrolls through Wikipedia is going to go 16, 16, 16. Oh, there's a 15-year-old. And that's the youngest. They're not going to know if we're correct, but there was a 13-year-old.
Yeah, and AI and stuff picks up that she's 16 as well.
Yep.
Because they go to they're going to look towards the church's information, and that's why that's why it's so important that we check it, because if she's 13, that's what should be reported, that she was 13, not that she was 16.
Yep, that's exactly right. Let's see. I think we have a couple more as we finish up here. Yeah, I just wanted to remember Clarissa Decker, age 15. That is the youngest wife that we know of. When you search it, AI, Google will tell you, oh yeah, the youngest wife of Brigham Young is Clarissa Decker. She was 15. He was 42. There's a 27-year age gap. But now we know it is very possible that Elizabeth, a 13-year-old with an over 29-year age gap, when he was 44, is a reality. So the big question is, as you were kind of alluding to, Landon, why was the date changed? And I'm talking about on Family Search, the difference between 2023, where they said that she was born in 1831, and what it is currently, that she was born in 1828. Why was this changed?
You can make that decision, I guess.
I guess. And that's the thing, everybody has to
make their own. I could see it being changed if, oh, hey, here's her birth certificate and it says this date. But, the documents that we saw, or the documents that were attached, there's nothing there that should override the legal documents that show her date of birth.
Yeah, and you make a good point, because now maybe that more people are talking about this. Like I said, I didn't just come up with this out of the air. This is being discussed on faithful platforms. Maybe now they will bring forward the documents that support 1828, because now it's important, right? We're starting to take notice and talk about it. And then we'll say, oh gosh, we were wrong. We just didn't have all the information. We're just going on what we have. So let's go to our next slide. So again, we're just looking back at that screenshot, current, where it says that she was born in 1828, 16 years. And this is what's picked up on all social media that I found today. You guys can go and search things too. And then the next screenshot, I think on the next slide, is 2 years prior. Right there, it just says, oh yeah, she was born in 1831. It says that in a couple places, making her 13 years old. So why the change? I mean, I think we touched on it. If you're going to choose a document and you have, a selection there, and you're not going to weigh them differently depending on how credible they are, you're going to pick the document that says, oh yeah, she was 16. Much more palatable, right? So that's what they chose. That's what they went with.
Yeah, and I want to point out that how sad this story is.
Exactly.
Not only is this a 13-year-old at marriage, but we don't have to look much further than her alternate names to say what was the result of this being married at 13 years old, or even if it was 16 years old. I mean, she married Brigham Young, a prophet of God, and 2 years later, do we know, is she divorced? Did she just leave him?
She wasn't divorced till 55, and she'd married 2 other people. So
she'd married other people while she was married to so she married other men while she was married to Brigham Young
That
still.
is what I read on one site. I could be wrong. Everybody fact check me,
So
please.
this is an interesting story for anyone
Yeah.
who wants to do some
Yeah.
research.
Yep.
But look, I mean, 5 marriages. Did all these guys die,
Yeah.
or was she, passed around as
Yeah.
used goods? She was used up by the time she was either 15 or 17, whichever one you want to look at. She was already used up by Brigham Young and thrown out
Yep.
and handed off to another man. I can't imagine that she. I'd love to hear the story of her
Mhm.
because who did she marry? Did she run off with this guy, or did Brigham Young say, "Here, you take her"? What
Yeah.
what
That
happened
happened a
here?
lot,
Yeah, what
passing
happened?
people
Just like
around so
Warren
that,
Jeffs, where he would
yeah.
take wives and move them to different husbands. Is that what's happening here?
Mhm.
There's a big story here that, we didn't have time to
No.
research tonight. And there may be some books about her somewhere that someone would, I'd love to know this story because this looks like a pretty sad story and what happened with her life throughout this, uh, through being handed off at 13 years old. You got to think that screws up your life. How many people do we hear say, "Oh, I was married so young. I was married at 19 to,
Yeah.
a returned missionary." She was married at 13 to a 45-year-old man who had what was she 11th wife at
He
the
was
time?
11. Yeah.
Had 11 other wives. Now, you don't think that's going to screw you up? Think again. And
No,
this
I
is the
know.
Lord's plan. This was celestial marriage. This was the highest exaltation we could get. That's what the Lord's plan was. People, we gotta really ask ourselves some serious
No.
questions about this.
That's what I mean. I think you just don't think about it. Like my dad didn't think about it. His grandma being married off at age 16 to the bishop in his mid 50s. It's beautiful. They're an LDS family. No, there's a very dark side to it that it's hard to go there, you
Yeah.
know.
Oh, they had 5 kids together,
Yeah, it was
and I'm the
beautiful.
offspring of the fourth.
Yes.
Well, that's great, but did they? How well did these kids know their father with
Right.
57? What kind of family life did they have? It brings up a lot of
Yeah,
questions. But
it does.
again, something we seriously need to. Anyone who seriously thinks this was the Lord's plan,
Yeah.
I'd love to hear you explain that.
Well, polygamy is becoming even more of a hot button now than it ever was before, with the new essay coming out that just, where they said Joseph Smith absolutely did practice polygamy. Today, I did 2 shorts on Michelle Stone having to take her website down and her content, because she, of course, is in the camp of it was Brigham, not Joseph, and another person who had a channel. So, regardless of where you land on all this, everybody is talking about polygamy now, what it means now, what it will mean in the future, in the next life, and of course, the very dark past. I don't think too many people disagree about that. So let's finish out. I think we have a couple more slides. There we go. Final. We should have just put it there, right? We're giving our final thoughts and takeaways. So
That's right. Well, I kind of just gave my final thoughts because,
yeah,
it is it's very disturbing. Uh, I think uh, based on what I see, and again, I can change my mind if I see some documents
mm-hmm.
that might corroborate this 1828 date better than just a Nauvoo, record that was typed, 30, 40, 50, 60 years later. I need to see some more proof, but based on the census, you take 29, you minus it from the year of the census, it's 1831. The death certificate says she was born in 1831. That seems to hold a lot more water to me than those other documents they're using. And I think almost anyone doing genealogy would say, I'm taking those dates because they seem, they're not typewritten, they're not hundreds of years later, they're not a gravestone that was redone 100 years after the fact. So, uh, disgusting practice, no matter how we look at it. And when the apologists say, "Well, God never really told us how to practice polygamy," so that tells you how depraved these men were, that they said, oh, well, he didn't tell us. Let's go for the 13-year-olds.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. This is the idea you came up with without instruction from the Lord. You didn't say let's make sure they're all 30 and that they're all consenting adults. That would be what reasoned people might do if this was a commandment. When you're sexual deviant, you come up with let's. It's like they were trying to beat each other on who could get the younger girl, and it's just disgusting.
No, it is, and there are groups like the AUB and some others where there is no child marriage. Consenting adults choose this lifestyle. We should be clear on that. If consenting adults choose it, then that's what they're doing, and that's it. But we're talking, of course, about the past and the child bride scenario, and I just again, I think I would just like to say that I hope other people look into this. I hope that people find documents. I hope that there's some more answers or some more clarification. And sometimes when you're doing genealogy and stuff and it's not clear, they'll say born 1828 through 1831. It's just not clear. They'll give a little range. But in this case, the range is everything 13 to 16, marriage to a man 29 years older. The age range is horrific either way, but it's just, you can't even fathom it if it really is a 13-year-old. So I don't know. I hope other people will dig in.
Yeah, and if they do, and they want to put a slideshow together and give us a call, we'd love to do an episode to tell our story.
No, I'm sure there are historians that know more than we do. Like I said, this is just, kind of fell in my lap today, and a lot of people were talking about it. So we just wanted to put something out to kind of push the conversation along, not as any kind of authority, but just kind of to put some sources out there that were kind of the low-hanging fruit. I'm sure there are some others. So, let's dig in and let's figure it out, because this is the lost youngest wife. If Elizabeth Fairchild truly is somebody who was born in 1831, she is the very youngest wife of Brigham Young. And that should be something that when you Google that comes up, as unfortunate and horrific as that is. Don't you agree?
Yeah, and I think she'd be the youngest wife of any of the prophets.
I think she would.
14. Previously held by Joseph Smith would have been 14 with Kimball.
Yep, I think you're right. So everybody, armchair historians out there, dig in, get a hold of us. Let us know what you guys think about the missing youngest wife. Could she have been 13 years old with a over 29 year age difference when she married Brigham Young, who was 44? Let us know what you think. Please like and subscribe to Mormonish Podcast. And if you'd like to be made aware of when new episodes come out, you can hit that notification bell. If you would like to help make a donation to the podcast, we just so appreciate everybody that does. You guys are fantastic. You allow us to stay up late at night and do these pop-up podcasts, right, Landon?
Yeah, we love it.
We love it. There's a link in the show notes to Donor Box. We're a nonprofit, so any donation, of course, is tax deductible. And we also have our link to our merch. You can grab a mug or a hat or anything that you like from Mormonish. And again, so nice to be on the screen with you, Landon, and co-hosting. I know I keep telling everybody, Landon has such a work schedule. So I have been bringing in some other people. We've had a lot of fun with them. And I think that'll continue for a little bit. But of course, Landon and I, we are Mormonish, and we will do the podcast whenever we can. And hopefully, if it ever slows down for you, Landon, we'll just get back to normal, right? It'll just be the two of us taking on the issues.
We hope so. Yep.
I hope so too. So we'll see everybody next time on Mormonish. Thank you all.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Mormonish. We really appreciate our listeners and would love to hear from you if you have a story you'd like to share. You can email us at mormonishpodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and on our website, mormonishpodcast.org. And don't forget to look for us on YouTube and like and subscribe. Keep joyful, everybody.